Live from the Space Tech Expo in beautiful Long Beach, California, this is Planetary Radio Live! Here's the host of Planetary Radio, Matt Kaplan.
So welcome to the travel show that takes you to the final frontier. As you just heard, we're at the Seaside Convention Center in Long Beach, where the second Space Tech Expo will be wrapping up in a couple of hours. You may be able to hear the activity on the exhibit floor in the background here. That's where scores of companies are showing off their hardware, software, and services that are the bedrock of all activity in space. Later today, I'll welcome Bruce Betts for an on-stage edition of What's Up, including the chance for a few people in our audience to play the space trivia game. Emily Lakdawalla is on the road this week, but she'll be back with us on next week's show. Right now, I want to welcome my boss, the CEO of the Planetary Society. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Bill Nye, the Science Guy.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Welcome to Planetary Radio.
Hey, you spoke here at the Expo this morning, didn't you?
Yes, a man can dream. Yeah, we talked about the need someday soon to deflect an asteroid and how the Planetary Society has this fabulous scheme to do it using the laser bees.
And you're an engineer. Do you get a kick out of being at something like this with all these
you're
gadgets
making fun
and
of me.
doodads?
Yes, so the gadgets, and I just love my beloved 316 stainless steel. I can't get enough of that. It's all over the place. All these beautiful hydraulic valves, fuel valves, little propulsion systems. Oh, let alone all the time. You can get some software to run your space mission. It's all here. Not all, but almost all.
Almost all. Haven't you dreamt of getting up there yourself, going into space for a long time?
No, I didn't prompt you with these questions.
No,
yes, yeah, I applied to be an astronaut 4 times. And it's just really hard now. You know, they start with how many PhDs do you have? And the first question is like 100. These guys who become astronauts now are just extraordinary. So, with that said, Matt, I think I know what you're driving at.
Yeah, it's a segue coming.
There might be a much quicker, in many ways more exciting way to get to space.
But haven't you done, how close have you come? Haven't you had something of a zero-G experience?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I've done zero-G in a Beechcraft airplane. So I don't know if you guys have ever done this. You get the plane up pretty high, and then you just start going downhill really fast. At the same speed that an apple. I had an apple on the spring scale for the Science Guy show. It was good. It's very effective. But you'll notice if you look out the windshield, wow, there's the ground coming right up. Yeah, and so then you want to pull up, and then you do a half dozen of those. The camera guy's throwing up, and it's cool. It would be more fun to get up in space and drift around for a few minutes, yes?
Yeah, well, I think we may just be able to talk about how that opportunity is rapidly approaching. And actually, one of our special guests up here on the stage has been offering that opportunity for some time, at least the zero-G opportunity.
So you could train?
Yes.
Hypothetically.
Not even hypothetically, in reality. We've been joined by a couple of folks who have made careers out of getting more people into space, or of giving them an experience that may be the next best thing. Michelle Peters is Director of Research and Education for Zero-G Corporation, the only company on our planet right now that provides the opportunity to experience true weightlessness without going into space. They've been doing this for nearly 9 years, flying their specially modified Boeing 727. Thousands of men and women have flown on G-Force One, including celebrities ranging from Martha Stewart to Stephen Hawking. And I know that story about Stephen Hawking is a great one because I've heard Peter Diamandis talk about it. Maybe we'll have time to get into that. They've experienced not just zero-G, these passengers on that 727, but simulated Martian and lunar gravity as the plane swoops through its parabolic trajectory. Please help us welcome Michelle Peters.
Thank you. Hi, Matt.
All right, so Michelle, didn't you just award a free ride to some lucky so-and-so here at the Expo?
We sure did. Miss Lynn Bowman with C.L. Smith.
And I don't know whether I can forgive you for not drawing my business card out.
I hope you'll forgive me someday.
I want to ask you about Zero-G's impressive education and research activities, since that's what you do. But I also realized just this morning that Zero-G may have provided another important service. Do you think that you've really come up with the model for companies like XCOR, that we'll be talking about in a moment, that sort of a business model, really, for companies that will soon start flying paying customers right up into space?
Well, we're definitely very excited that we've been able to bring the experience of weightlessness to the general public. The access to weightlessness, space environments, Martian and lunar gravities has never really been this widely available to just about anyone, any time previously. With zero-G, anybody 8 years of age and older can come and fly with us. So.
And now that we are starting to see these other opportunities coming up from a couple of companies at least, you guys are still going to be at a very different price point. I mean, it's going to be a little bit cheaper still to go into zero-G on that 727.
Well, we are. We're not going as high, and the flight profile is quite a bit different. The experience of weightlessness is essentially the same. However, there are lots of opportunities for research, for education, for adventure travelers. All of these better prepare the individual and the public at large for eventually going to space, be it XCOR or on orbit or Mars or the moon someday.
I'm going to ask you to pull that microphone in just a little bit closer because I'm hearing a touch of feedback there. Having done that, I'm going to say that one of these companies that may be studying the example set by zero-G is XCOR Aerospace, based out in California's Mojave Desert, where they are really just a few hundred feet away from their competition at Virgin Galactic, where they're finishing Spaceship Two. Longtime Planetary Radio listeners may remember a couple of past shows that have featured XCOR and its spacecraft, the Lynx. Bill, I think you got another chance to sit in that Lynx mock-up that's here on the floor.
Not yet. I leaned on it though. It's very cool, you guys. It's the dream. It takes off from. Andrew will talk about it. It takes off from a runway using rocket fuel. You don't need two spacecraft. You don't need two different fuel tanks. You don't need all the stuff that you might have expected. A guy my age might have expected. It's like the dream come true if it really works.
So that Andrew that Bill mentioned is Andrew Nelson. He's the Chief Operating Officer and Vice President of Business Development for XCOR Aerospace. He leads the business team that, among other things, is establishing commercial operations at locations around the U.S. and the world. He also came up with a concept called wet lease that is at the core of the business development plan for the Lynx. Andrew, welcome to Planetary Radio.
Thank you, Governor Kaplan.
So, all right, you know what I have to ask right up front. How long before individuals with the money are going to start riding those suborbital trips into space on the Lynx?
Well, we're hoping to enter the flight test program toward the end of this year. And if it's a good flight test program, 9 to 12 months later, you too can fly to the edge of space.
All right, I'm looking forward to it. Now,
So you're talking about January 1st, 2015 kind of thing?
Hopefully into 2014.
Like Halloween 2014?
Well, somewhere between Halloween and New Year's.
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
2014. That would be pretty cool.
somebody's chomping at the bit.
There you go.
So,
absolutely.
as you see it now, what does it look like a ticket's going to cost?
$95,000. Which actually gets you more than just the flight. You have 3 or 4 days of exciting training. One of those experiences may be the zero-G aircraft. You'd be also doing some high-G training, some medical screening, Rocket 101, learn how to wear an astronaut, a real pressure suit. So you're going to spend time with 10 or 15 people just like yourself who are really excited about going to space.
Interesting that you mentioned that zero-G, the Shell's group, may play a part in this training regimen.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's very valuable for people to experience the weightless aspect, to really understand what it's going to be like, because when you have main engine cutoff at Lynx, you're going to have instant silence, but also you're going to feel instant weightlessness. And that's going to last for about 6 or 7 minutes. And it'd be great for you to really know how that feels before you get there.
Now, in the Lynx, it's kind of like the cockpit of a military aircraft. Is the passengers going to be in the right-hand seat?
They're going to be in the right-hand seat. They're going to fly just as a co-pilot might. In fact, they aren't just going to be passengers. They will be participants. So you'll be trained to do a few things. We have a little camera there that shows the rocket plume, and we want you to monitor that a bit and help the pilot out. If you see something not right, then let us know.
What is this wet lease concept that I mentioned?
Well, it's a way for people to enter the spaceline industry, or for a country have an instant manned spaceflight program for just the purchase. But we end up doing all the servicing. We provide the fuel, that's the wet, insurance, crew, and pilots.
So let me get it straight. You're talking about other nations that might, you could never really expect to have a human spaceflight program of their own, could buy a Lynx?
Well, they would wet lease the Lynx. We would still own it, but it would be a long-term lease, and but absolutely an instant manned spaceflight program for probably a lot less money than the president's jet that they're flying around in.
So let me ask you, when I rent a car and they say, do you want the fuel option? That's a wet lease.
That would be considered a wet lease.
Yeah,
the fuel
okay,
option,
that's cool.
yeah. Unless you paid for the insurance. That's just a subtlety.
We get a rider on your car insurance policy.
Well, there's a lot of riders on a rental car policy, but that's what it means. I buy the gas with the car.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
when I
that's
lease
correct.
the car, I'm also leasing a tank of gas.
Exactly the same. Yeah.
Is it going to be like the rental car companies? You try and get the people to buy the tank up front and not get it on the trip?
They don't have a choice. Yeah, but it'd be like us starting an airline. We wouldn't go out and buy a 737. We'd go lease one with all of the bells and whistles, and we'd start flying to Cozumel. So.
Michelle, Andrew, among the things that you guys, your companies at least, have in common is a commitment to doing research while you're up there. Michelle, you guys have been doing this for a long time. What are some examples of some of the science that has been conducted on G-Force One?
Well, commercially speaking, we've had research payloads that include some hardware for commercial space. We've also had non-contact, non-invasive hemodynamic monitoring, which essentially is a means to determine the flow of fluids within the body cavity without actually having to perform an invasive surgery. Useful for EVA during spaceflight, miners, and a variety of other applications. Regolith testing, low velocity impact, any variety, wide variety of research that's been conducted.
Who are some of the clients that have, bought these rides and brought their experiments, their work on the plane?
MIT, Harvard, the University of Basel in Switzerland, NovaWorks, Ball Aerospace and Technologies, Aerogel, Altius Inc., corporations, universities, individual inventors that want to test their ideas, and any number of people.
Bill, can't we come up with I think we really have to come up with an
think you
experiment,
should.
don't we?
Yeah, we need to have an experiment, and I think we're going to need some people to ride with it to make sure that it's working.
I can think of a couple that are here
yeah.
on stage that might need to perform the experiment on the research.
Let me ask you,
Yeah.
when I did this thing in the Science Guy show I mentioned earlier, we get 4.5, 5 seconds of zero-G. How long do you get in the 727?
On our flights, you'll get about 27 seconds of weightlessness, followed by 30-ish seconds of 1.8 Gs, followed by 30 seconds of weightlessness, followed by 30 seconds.
That's cool. It's cool.
It's very cool.
Was I right about simulating the low G environments as well? I've heard about
Yes.
Martian gravity.
They're actually not simulated. It is the same gravity level that you would experience on Mars or on the Moon or on orbit.
Andrew, isn't
physics.
research... Oh, go ahead, Bill.
Well, it's physics.
Yeah. Einstein would be proud.
Well, or actually Isaac Newton.
And
It's
yeah,
all
Isaac,
good.
yeah.
It's all good.
Andrew,
I interrupted.
isn't research a big part of X-Core's business plan as well?
Absolutely. The Lynx, because of its size and low cost of operation, is a fabulous platform for research. We've the right seat where a participant can sit can be taken out, and 2 shuttle mid-deck locker-sized racks can be put there. Behind the pilot seat, there's a small box where 25 kilograms of payload can go. We even have some cowlings on the back near the engines where you can actually expose things to the upper atmosphere, collect samples, or test your electronics or whatever in the vacuum of space.
I'll give you another example. Alan Stern, who has been on this radio show Lord knows how many times, he, I know, is training to take rides with you guys, but he showed me, or directed me to a shot of the Lynx with this interesting cowl on top that contained a telescope.
That's right. So in our Lynx Mark III version, so the first production derivative, will have a large pod. Some people call it the mill pod, but I would never call it a mother-in-law pod. And it's quite large, and you can have a telescope there, or you can have a suborbital launcher, an orbital launcher. You can put a CubeSat into low Earth orbit. Yeah, absolutely. And so it's going to be a very exciting capability in the future. It can hold up to about 650 kilograms of payload.
If only I knew somebody who had a CubeSat that needed a run.
But you said 650 kilograms, is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
That's huge.
That's a lot of weight. It's bigger than me.
Yeah. But I'm just trying to think, but I mean, for example, Matt, what is the mass of New Horizons on the way to Pluto?
Oh man, I'm going to
think
turn
it's
to
450
Bruce, see if he has
kilos.
any idea. I mean, it's a relatively
It's
small
less than half a
spacecraft.
ton. So you're
Yeah.
taking over a ton.
We'll find out from Bruce if he knows when we do What's Up.
But we want to make sure that's not the payload weight. That's the total weight of the launcher and the payload, et cetera.
But still.
But we can certainly get 12 to 14 kilograms to low Earth orbit, 300 nautical miles circular, low angular inclination. Polar about 6 to 7 kilograms. So that's still a lot. You can do a lot of research
Yeah.
in that area.
It could change the world.
Or worlds.
Here's a slight change, though not much of a one. How big a role is education going to play in X-Chorus future? Is this a priority?
Absolutely, it is a strong priority. We actually are working now with a couple school districts that are pulling together programs to fly experiments with us. I've mentioned many times where, in this spot behind the pilot, these small tissue box size experiments they could do for $1,000, so the kids can go out, raise money with bake sales and whatnot. Yeah, Kickstarter, and then go fly their own experiment. They learn entrepreneurship, science, and how to have a great time.
One of your colleagues told me that your big boss, the CEO and chairman, Jeff Gleason, that this is a big deal for you.
It's a big deal for Jeff. It's a big deal for all of us because we know what spurred us to do what we're doing, and it was somehow interacting with scientists or the moon program or whatever it was, and we want to pass that on. When you have a good, strong science educated population, you become an innovation culture, and that's really what drives our economy. We're very excited about it.
Michelle, you're nodding your head. I know Zero G wasn't this a big part of the mission there for a long time?
Absolutely, and just in agreement with Andrew, inspiring the kids through an exciting opportunity like going to space or doing experiments in space is tremendous. We worked for 6 years with the Northrop Grumman Foundation to train more than 1,500 middle school math and science teachers. And they would take those experiments that they did on the airplane back into the classroom. And through that program, we're able to reach over 1.5 million middle school math and science. And they're still using the curriculum today that they started using in 2006. It's fantastic.
This is like the tapes of the Science Guy show that are on every 6th grade science teacher's shelf around the country.
Yeah, it is. The thing is, let me just say, it was Carl Sagan who said to me, to my face, as we say in junior high school, he said to my face, focus on pure science because technology is going to change. And so if you make videos about the physics of zero-G flight, it's going to be true, presumably as long as people are flying in the Earth's atmosphere. So as long as there's gravity and so on. So these things do stand the test of time if they're done properly. So that's cool. So let's work together. What do you say, everybody?
I like that.
Absolutely.
Michelle, you said you've got, I can't reach the little Three Musketeers here.
We did a huddle break, everybody.
You have some new initiative coming up that kind of fits into the stuff we've been hearing from Andrew as well.
We do. It actually fits into education, research, space travel. We are working with other organizations to develop space training programs, specifically to teach people how to function in microgravity, hands-on activities with equipment, locomotion, what to expect, how to manage physically in that environment, because it is very different than anything you've ever experienced.
I want to give our audience a chance to jump in here in a moment. So any of you out here who have a question, go ahead and raise your hand now, and we will have one of our great folks run over with a microphone and see what you have to say. Because we have maybe 5 minutes left, something like that. With that in mind, I want to ask each of you, maybe Michelle with you first, how can people learn more about Zero G and maybe especially about how they could get themselves on GeForce One.
Absolutely. One of the best ways to learn about our company and how it works is to go to our website, which is www.gozerog.com.
Andrew, same question for you.
Well, it would be very similar with a different website. Ours is www.xcor.com, and you'll find a lot of great information there, as well as you can also seek out a group called Citizens in Space. They actually have bought 10 flights, and I think they're taking applications on, if you want to do your own experiment, they might give you the flight for free, and then you can develop it. So check out that website as well. They just did a great Hacker Dojo workshop in Mountain View, California.
Hacker Dojo.
Yeah, so it's called the Hacker Dojo up in Mountain View. It's a really great space. Yeah, good stuff.
I think we're ready with a question. Hi, introduce yourself, sir.
Hi, Matt. This is Jim Claxco, reporting for Ad Astra Magazine. I have a question for you and Bill. I was curious to know what impact the recent Russian event has had on Planetary Society activities.
Well, fundamentally, you're talking about Chelyabinsk, Russia, on the 14th of February. I paraphrase when I say roughly, told you so. The Planetary Society has been advocating the research into asteroids for a number of years, and we've been giving this grant called the Shoemaker NEO grant, Near Earth Object Grant, named after Gene Shoemaker, for 16 years. This is our 16th year. So we supply people who apply for a grant with money to do something to advance the detection or understanding of near Earth objects. So in the case of that 24-hour period, after Chelyabinsk, after the bolide or airburst or thing that exploded over Chelyabinsk hit, later that same 24-hour period, an asteroid named romantically 2012 DA14 came between us and our communication satellites. We found that. We supplied some amateur astronomers in La Sagra, Spain, with the money to buy a camera suited to photographing these objects moving that fast. This was not done by NASA. It was not done by ESA. It was not done by anybody except the Planetary Society. So we are, frankly, excited that people around the world are more aware of the threat of asteroids. It is the only preventable natural disaster. And along with that, I just remind everybody, I reminded people in the U.S. Congress, we were there last week, it's very unlikely that you would do business with a guy who handed you his business card and said, amateur brain surgeon. It's probably not a guy you'd sign up with, right? Or a gal. But
Amateur astronaut, amateur space pilot.
yeah, but amateur astronomer is a different deal. The people that pursue astronomy for the love of it are very serious and very skilled and very diligent. And so this is the kind of people in La Sagra, Spain, who found this thing. So those are the kind of people, not exclusively, but the kind of people that we support through our Shoemaker NEO grants. It's an exciting time in human history. We could deflect an asteroid, people.
We got another question right back here. Hi, sir. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Les Boschel. I have an X4 question. How long is it going to be until you can get a manned spacecraft into orbit?
Okay, manned spacecraft. We do have an orbital plan. It was Jeff Grayson spoke about it. We don't really have a timeline on that. Best estimates are probably 10 to 12 years. That's just because we want to focus on getting suborbital right first. Then we have, I'll call it a couple X-plane demonstrators we need to work on first, a thermal protection system demonstrator. But after that, then we can really start prosecuting against the larger vehicle plan.
So can I ask you specifically, what's the difference in reentry speed? Is it like a factor of 9 or something?
Yeah, it's pretty significant. And, the Lynx goes 1,000 meters a second at its top speed. And in order to get into orbit, you need about 8,000 meters per second. And so it's about 7 or 8 times. And then you figure you're going to pick up a little speed. So you'll be coming in at Mach 25, which gets pretty hot. That's the real big. But we want an orbital vehicle that can fly once a day. That's a completely different sort of system.
Any other questions? We got one way in the back there. We'll do a little editing on this and jump right to your question. Hi, sir. What's your name?
Josh Gray from California Lutheran University. I have a more personal question for any of you, if you're willing to answer. I found that people who are really passionate about their fields often have a favorite author or a favorite book or movie that especially inspired them. What would be any of yours that pushed you into your current job or field or your hobby?
Great question. Andrew, why don't you take that first?
I always wanted to fly on the Pan Am Clipper.
Oh, 2001.
2001 Space Odyssey. I was a little young the first time I watched it to really understand what happened at the end, but I've since figured that out.
You did?
Maybe. I think. So I didn't understand it at 6. And then The Man with the Golden Gun. That was a great movie for me. I thought James Bond was pretty cool, and he had great gadgets, and he went to space once. So, yeah. But this Pan Am Clipper, that was the thing that got me.
Michelle?
For me, it would have to be Jacques Cousteau. And although I am in space, the field of aerospace and aviation, it was his exploratory spirit and his commitment to keep going and just keep inspiring others and also keep discovering new things and creatures.
Well, for me, it was two things. There was my physics teacher, Mr. Lang, was very influential. But the original Star Trek, where these guys are just flying all over the galaxy quadrants. For some reason, everybody spoke English. It was cool. And then they had the same problems that everybody in Shakespeare had. They had the same problems. It was still humans. And so I guess fundamentally, it was the optimism of that show. Just the intense optimism about the future that really got me. And I suffer trepidation now as we look at climate change, 7 billion people living where there used to be 1.5. But if you're not optimistic, you probably won't get anything done. You certainly aren't going to go 0G flying, and you're not going to go X-coring. So.
I was going to say Star Trek, but you know what? You reminded me that I built the model of that Pan Am Clipper and had it on my shelf as a kid for a long time. So 2001, thank you, Arthur C. Clarke, wherever you are. Yeah. Folks, we are out of time for this segment of the show. Please join me in thanking our special guest, Zero G Corporation's Director of Research and Education, Michelle Peters, and X-Corp Aerospace's Chief Operating Officer and Vice President of Business Development, Andrew Nelson. Bill, thanks for being part of yet another Planetary Radio Live.
Oh, no, Matt. It is I who must thank you. And I want to thank everybody for listening. And please, am I allowed to plug the Planetary Society?
Yeah, we'll only run this in the webcast version.
Okay, well, just if you want to do something about space, if you want to participate in space exploration as a citizen, I encourage you to join the Planetary Society. We really are influencing space policy at the world's largest space agency, and to a lesser extent, the second and third largest space agencies. And we are involved in some cool niche projects, especially whatever it's going to take to detect asteroids. So thank you all. Thank you. Oh, sure. Yeah.